I'll come back to it. Within the School for the Deaf and the Resource Center for the Blind, all of the students who are serviced by these two institutions are within the mainstream school. So they attend what we would say then regular school here in Grenada. A lot more that can be done, but we do have a lot happening in Grenada for special needs. In terms of assessment, through the Ministry of Education, assessments are done for students who are referred. A placement would be given, whether it is you are, for example, you can be sent to a special school depending on the results, or within the mainstream school. But parents do have that opportunity to decide to as well where they would like for all. So this is based on the Sustainable Development Goal 4, which speaks to quality education. So this is very important for us within the Ministry of Education in guiding all of the policies, in guiding whatever is done to the curriculum, whatever is done in terms of programs and projects within the Ministry of Education. Sustainable Development Goal 4. Technology as well, assistive technology. All of our students, they have access to laptops. Even before COVID, some of them would have had access as well to assistive devices. In terms of assistive technology, it goes beyond that of laptops, and we also are thinking in terms of, for example, hearing aids. We had Starkey Hearing Foundation, which came in. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we lost them, but we hope again, very soon we can have them again, where over 1,000 persons in Grenada would have been fitted with hearing aids through Starkey Hearing Foundation, and that was free. And I should say, too, that during that time, the School for the Deaf was able to provide that data. Mr. Thomas, I see you there, because of your good work back then, would have been able to provide data to the Ministry of Health in terms of persons who would have had hearing loss in Grenada. And we had over 1,000 persons being fitted with hearing aids. Now, I want to also speak on the special education policy, which as well has been approved by Cabinet. We do have a special education needs policy, which more or less is guiding practice, the code of practice for special education in Grenada. We would also be upscaling on the number of people that are presently at that department, the special education unit. We will be having additional persons, special education officers, as well as speech therapists who can assist as well with the work here in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. I think I've taken a lot of time. I think during the questioning, there are things I would be able to maybe to speak on. But I want to commend this organization. And I'm taking off my Ministry of Education hat now, and I'm speaking as Michelle Braffett, an advocate for persons with disability. Civil society has an important part to play in advocating for inclusive education, inclusive practice. I want to challenge you. This is just the first step. But I want to challenge you to advocate more, to be out there speaking on things that may not be inclusive in relation to persons living with a disability. So it is good to have this session within the four walls of this building, but we need to hear your voice as well out there, advocating for persons with disability. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Mrs. Braffett. Yes, we hear a lot of words coming out, and it's being repeated as we go along. So we're going to hear more of it. But I just want to keep you focused, so I'll just mention a few of them. We hear inclusiveness. We hear in transformative agenda. We are hearing respect. We hear equal access, acceptance, equitability, and we have to keep those in mind. Now, if when we leave here, all of this information remains inside here, and we have not seen the transformation, and we are not changing the way we do things, changing the way we build our buildings, and changing accessibility for all persons, we would have failed. So we have to be able to transform the information. We have to be able to take that information and put it into action to get greater accessibility for every person. It is an all-inclusive business we're talking about tonight. So we will move on, and we're going down to our third speaker. Yes, Dr. Nixon, we invite you now to speak on inclusiveness in healthcare. And I believe that is one that will get a lot of questions at the end, so take notes, please. Dr. Give her a round of applause as she comes.
I just saying, I hope I can see. Honorable Minister, my colleagues at the head table, distinguished people with disabilities in the crowd, you guys actually frighten me because I don't know if I can come up to this. But I thank you for having me here. So I want to ask a question. Where's your doctor's office? Where do you seek care? Upstairs, downstairs, kitchen, coop, where is it? Is there an elevator? Sometimes? On where you go? Do you know that there is supposed to be an elevator once it's upstairs? I'm just saying, no, I'm not speaking to you, I'm just speaking to everybody. Do you know that in order, your doctor is supposed to set his office up, or your healthcare service is actually supposed to be at floor level, at ground level? I'm just saying. Do you know that your office is actually supposed to be accessible by wheelchair if you can't walk in? Do you know that the bathroom, it must be properly lit? Do you know the bathroom must be accessible to everybody who comes into the clinic without encumbrances? Actually, most of my colleagues don't know that. Simply because we have not been taught that. We haven't been taught it in medical school, we haven't been taught it in nursing school. And so when you come to the clinic and you say, Lord nurse, I've been here for 3 hours, I need to pee. You have to hold that wee, because we don't understand. Or when you're a child who is differently abled, because the truth is we're all differently abled. I cannot need to put my knee in gear to get to the table, because we're really all just differently able. Some of us are a little more able than others, and some of us more able in other places. I remember my friend going to a hearing disabled comedy show with her hearing disabled friend, and she could hear, she was fine. And the person was doing all the signage and giving the joke, and the people were disabled were laughing, and she was like a fool, because she couldn't understand that she was the disabled person at that point. So at the end of the day, we're all different. So when we consider healthcare, generally, I think we need to consider diversity and then include. Because we could talk about inclusion, but we have to remember, first of all, that we are different, okay? And have different needs. And when you come into a healthcare setting, it must provide that we all become, it must be accessible, not only by cost, because that's also accessibility, not only by the fact that it's physically accessible, not only by the fact that you can get to your medications, that you can have surgery if you deserve it, because those are all the things that people who everybody needs. So It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, male, female, gay, have one leg, two legs, three eyes. It really doesn't matter. Everybody must have access to the best quality of care. Do we know that? Are we given the chance? I'm talking about us as healthcare providers. Are we given the chance? Have we been educated to do so? I don't think so, not as much as is needed now. And where inclusiveness is being promoted on such an intense level, and rightfully so, there is a place for re-education of healthcare providers, for reorientation of the policies and just the care that you deliver, for restructuring of the physical environment in which we deliver care. Why can't the person who works in the health center go to Mr. John's home to do his dressing after he's just lost his leg? Just asking rhetorical questions because I want you to think about the things where inclusiveness is very important. So tonight, the moderator said that the bathroom was downstairs. And I'm going to end that that point right there. Because I don't know I could get down to the bottom of the stairs before I wet myself. Those are the things. And I remember walking in and asking, is this accessible to everybody? And not just physically accessible. Would I come in here and think that the roof is too low and my paranoia, because we forget that mental illness is a very important part of our population. Have we tolerated, have we, as caregivers, given the mentally ill equal access to care by treating them with respect? Do we respect them and love them and reach out to them and embrace them, or do we think that they're going to kill all of us? Or we just not touch. I don't want to go and bathe or go and wash that man outside. I'm not touching the dirty people. That's how we behave. Don't come into my office because you're too dirty. I had a guy, I worked in mental illness for a long time when I lived in another jurisdiction, and a guy came to my office one day. He will always come to my office when I went into private practice. He would always come to my office when he was getting ill. So if I saw him in the morning and I saw him 12 o'clock, I know he's not doing well. And then one day eventually I started to take medication from the hospital, and when he comes, I said, just come, I'm going to give you a shot. Yeah, you're the only person I'm allowing. But that's because I treated him differently. And he came one, he was really very ill, and I couldn't get him. He'd been out there wandering all over the place. And he came one day, and if you lived where I lived, you'd have 3 padlocks on this door, 2 on the gates, and I probably had like 6 padlocks to my office and stuff. And he took every one of them. And then he put his penis through the grill and peed on my carpet in the presence of the old ladies there who all nearly dead. But he was ill, and my staff knew, and everybody was okay. And the rule is that you actually ask us, there is actually a memorandum of understanding that existed between the Ministry of Health, hospital, / police, to assist in getting people, just because they're accustomed to doing the restraint and stuff. And I called the police, and I knew the police officers. And the guy was standing in the passage into the office, and the police came. Hey, dog, what happening? And I was cool because I wasn't mentally ill, right? And the guy got up to turn, and the policeman pulled his gun. Guess what I did? I'm just happy to be alive. I actually jumped in front of the policeman. And I said to him, you're mad? You're crazy? And he said, what did you just do? I said, are you crazy? And I said to the guy, come here. He was very quiet. Police put handcuffs on him. He went to the hospital, got his shots, and I was walking by my office the next day, a little less unquiet, but he got better. So, are we going to extend ourselves to ensure that the people who have challenges, children who have learning disabilities, who have behavioral problems, how well prepared are we as healthcare providers to make sure that they get equal? Somebody talked about equity. That's equity, right? When the child comes and he jumps all over and he wants to break everything in the room, it's okay. You want to kill the mother, but this is a child who is ill. So until we are able to educate our population of caregivers and develop a sense of tolerance to those who are providers of care, and to understand that everybody is different. We're not all going to come in with driving a Mercedes Benzes, can sit quietly, cross your legs, keep quiet, listen to all the jazz music you play. Some people really just want to hear dancehall in your office, right? We're that diverse. Until we're able to provide that level of consciousness, of delivery of care, until we're able to be ambassadors and to teach people to be ambassadors for people who are different, until we're able to understand that I am supposed to deliver care to anybody to the highest quality, regardless of who they are and where I am. And I'm also to understand that among my colleagues, my peers who work to deliver care, there are disabilities, and I need to be tolerant of them, and I need to ensure that they too can deliver care. Because I saw a young lady who had mental illness as a nurse who was treated very badly, including by her supervisors, senior-most supervisors. What did we do in my old jurisdiction? One nurse come in and she's not well, and the rest of us find like a corner and make a room and keep her in the ER and hide her until she settled down, and call a psychiatrist to see her. We don't expose her and cart her off to Mount Gay, because the truth is, Mount Gay has stigma related to mental illness. And we, healthcare providers, are the ones who provide the most stigma. When are we going to include in our policies that we need to have inclusiveness at all levels? Whether we're giving care or whether we're participants as a collective, understanding and delivering the quality of health care we're giving, right? About inclusiveness, about diversity, and ensure that, yes, we could have the best hospital. It doesn't really matter if you don't care about the people who are different. We're doomed to fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nixon. Boy, she made me sad, you know. Really sad. Think about our built environment. Think about St. George's. Think about the sidewalk. Anyhow, the minister is here, and I think they are cabinet on Mondays, and they have parliament maybe Friday or whenever. But Dr. Nixon asked a question about our policy. Okay, so we're coming up towards the end of May. By the end of June, around this time, we could hear something. Minister, you? We have been introduced to a few more words, you know. Diversity, re-education, restructuring. And I can't help thinking of consciousness, because it really takes a consciousness. Well, we're not excusing anybody, but long ago, when I was growing up, things like that were not discussed. But we have no excuse today because we know a lot. And we have forums like these, and we have in our education system a lot is spoken about. Well, we heard Mrs. Braffett. I mean, they are doing a lot. But these things need to get to the wider community, and we need to take it from just knowing it to practicing it. And then when we get a policy by the end of next month, it will reinforce it. Okay, right. So we are moving on, and we will now invite to the podium a gentleman who himself will share his experience. I've been following him since he was a youngster in school, and we see where he has reached, and he will give us a little bit of information on himself and I guess his experience. Mr. Jamal Phillip. Welcome him. Right here.
That's it. All right. Good night or good evening to everyone. hope that we have our learning caps on and that we are in a position to understand and to realize things that we haven't realized before when it comes to persons living with disabilities. All right, so as it's said, my name is Jamal Philip, and tonight my task is to speak about myself, really. But the thing about it is, I'm not the type that like to boast or brag, as they would say. But I like speaking about myself, and simply because I've realized that whenever I speak about myself, I educate people, I encourage persons who are living with disabilities, and just bearing that in mind and knowing that this happens whenever I speak about myself, it gave me passion to do so whenever I have to. So I'll take the pleasure in doing that tonight to you guys. Um, where do I start? That has been the problem sometimes. There's no way to start when you see how to talk about myself. But I'll try to start from something that might be considered the beginning. At a very young age, 3 to be specific, that is when I lost my sight. Right? Um, I've been diagnosed with cancer in the eye, retinoblastoma. I lost both eyes, unfortunately, and that had to happen in order to stop the spread of the cancer. So I thank God for that, because if they didn't remove the eyes, I don't think I might have been here today. All right? So it's better to be alive. And I'm happy that I'm alive. All right? Now, as a person living with a disability and being blind specifically, I I am that person that is, very determined. I always believe that I have no limits in what I can do. Even if I'm struck with, that harsh word, reality, I still try to rise above it as much as I can. And then, if it really boils down to what it is, then I just, go with the flow. But that's just one part of life, you know. Um, so I've been through regular school. I've been to primary school, I've been to secondary school, um, successful in obtaining CXC, and now I am a itinerant teacher, and I've been employed with the Ministry of Education for over almost 18 years now. Um, I am married. This is my second marriage. Yeah. And don't be thinking that I got divorced. My first wife, unfortunately, has been deceased. So, hence the reason why, and it's all because of the Most High. God decided to take me through those, challenges and journeys in life for a reason, right? Um, so, I've been through everything normal as quote unquote a normal person. Um, I never really had no issues per se being blind. I always, as I said, I believe that I always could do it. One of my only challenges really is just getting to and from places by myself. There are some places that I'm pretty much good at doing, but obviously there are places that I would definitely need assistance, because technically I've been, like that all my life. So from time to time, I've always been depending on someone to move from here. I can't say I have the memory or the knowledge as to what sight is really like. So it come in as if, this is more or less natural to me. Of course, I would sit and imagine and say to myself, whoa, I wish I could have drive. If I could have drive, I had my license already, you know. And these are the things I sit and fantasize about. Even if I go as far as thinking about the electric cars and think they probably have available now, you know, well, this comes to the next part of what I'm capable of, technology. I say to myself, boy, I know technology too good to know that, it has its limits, so to actually have a GPS where you have to depend on, in full blast to take you from point A to point B. No backup. That is a challenge. You have to have faith to do that. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I would be scared or, or thinking that I may not take the plunge if I have to drive an electric car. Maybe I will whenever it comes. We see how that goes. Right? I am capable of a lot, if I may say it like that. I fix and repair computers. A lot of people don't know that. I try to promote myself as much as I could, whenever I could. I love music. I'm a DJ as well. My DJ name is DJ Red. So if you have a event that you want me to play at for you, you can link me up. Right? I used to record music for people and even myself. I sing as well. I have my own compositions. I try a lot of things in life. And a lot of things that I know and I'm capable of, mind you, I self-taught. I'm the type of person I love to research. I love to figure out. I love to find out, and I love to test. I mean, positively. I like this to build my knowledge. I love to edify myself as much as possible. I like to listen to people speak and see what I can gain from what they're saying and to encourage myself a lot, based on what I'm hearing and so on and so forth. I, as I said earlier, I love to speak about myself because persons can be educated, persons can be inspired, and so on and so forth. And that ties into my job because I know when I was a student back then, the same support service that I'm providing to students within the mainstream or regular school, quote unquote, is the same thing that I used to be receiving before. And I feel happy to, be giving back that, as a blind person, you know. I'm not going to be too long because trust me, if I have to really talk about myself, it is definitely going to take a long time, probably about an hour and a half, who knows, because there's so much about Jamal Phillip. And in order for you to know a lot more, you have to ask questions. You know what I mean? So I think I'll leave it here for now. So if you want to know any more, I'll give you time to gather your thoughts and questions, and I'll be willing to answer, because I know questions will come, so I wouldn't want to spill too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillip. I don't think that round of applause was right. Here we had the things that we heard earlier put into action. And you know what it tells me? It tells me that we are doing well as a nation, but not well enough. And when I heard Mr. Phillips say that the same things, the support systems that are in place and that he is given now is what he received, it tells us that we're on the right track. But we need to bring a lot of people along with us. We need to get much further. We need to do much more. We need to change a lot of things that exist today that should not exist today. I don't want to talk about in tongue, eh? But we have a gentleman here, one of three, a nicely balanced panel, eh? 3 gentlemen, 3 ladies. So the gentleman that will come to deliver now, I want to create a team, a T-E-A-M, not theme, a team. So it would be himself and the minister. Together, these 2 gentlemen will bring along whoever else they wish, and they will create the type of environment that we need to ensure that we get to the all-inclusiveness that is so needed in this country. And you will understand why when Mr. Bartholomew come to the podium and tell us who he is, what he does, and I believe most of the questions afterwards should go to him, eh? I'll give you a heads up. Okay, just let us welcome Mr. Bartholomew with a lusty round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. I would first start with thanking the moderator, Ms. Judy Benoit. And I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Honorable Philip Telesford, Member of Parliament, who happens to be the Minister of Social Development. Looking forward to forming a team with you, sir. Our illustrious panelists. I am number 5 tonight, and what I've heard so far, I've learned a lot from especially Dr. Nixon regarding healthcare, the location of the spaces, and accessibility for persons with disability, or differently abled persons. Also, the audience, thanks for coming out tonight, and the persons that are viewing online, streaming from whichever part of the world you are, thank you, and the St. Paul's community for inviting the Planning and Development Authority. My name is Kelly Bartholomew. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Planning and Development Authority, formerly Physical Planning Unit, which was an arm of the Ministry of Infrastructure Development. Now we are now a statutory body, and we are guided by the Act, the Physical Planning and Development Control Act, Act 23 of 2016. And when I consider the theme tonight, which is Transformative Solutions for Inclusive Development, that falls directly into our alley. The PDA, as we are now calling it, the acronym, our intention is to develop a 50-year plan for a holistic development of Grenada. And it will be based on what was outlined in the Act, and also other ministries will be part of this plan, as well as public consultation. So we look at how we want Grenada to be transformed, how we want our roads to look, our hospitals, our schools, our public spaces to be enjoyed by citizens, visitors alike in the next 50 years. Now, it may sound like a long time ahead, but time runs very fast. And at the Physical and Development Authority, we have developed some departments as the Act outlines. For example, we have a development and control, which is what physical planning has been known for, which is approval or refusal of applications for development throughout the state of Grenada. Compliance department. We've recently bolstered our compliance team, hiring new persons on board, and we also had them trained and dealing with compliance. Previously, we had building inspectors dealing with compliance, but we have over 30,000 housing stock in Grenada, and it's quite a challenge to deal with all these complaints and applications. So that is the direction we're moving. Forward planning, land use and zoning is where we have to start. So for locals or anyone interested in investing in Grenada, they would have an idea what locations certain developments would be allowed. That will require us hiring the right persons, consultants, to offer guidance moving forward. It is a challenge in terms of land use. We have situations where you have maybe a gas station may set up next to a dwelling home, a car wash, a bar, a nightclub in a residential community. So that is the direction we're going, to curb these activities. Heritage as well, as laid out in the Act, how we deal with our structures of historical importance to the country as a whole. Also, a dispute tribunal, the Planning and Development Authority, we're no stranger to disputes, from attorneys writing to us, from persons want some sort of redress on why their application has not been approved. So the Act stipulates that we set up a dispute tribunal. So this is something that has to happen. The Act of 2023, sorry, the Act 23 of 2016 adopted the OECS building codes of 2015. So it's now part of our law. Appendix F deals with accessibility guidelines for persons with disability. And we are guided in the Act, the building code, where it says designers should be aware of the U.S. American with Disability Act, which was signed in 1990. So we as a planning authority, we would have to work with other organizations. We've dealt with many large developments in the country, dwelling homes, hotels, but when it comes to healthcare facilities, as I learned from Dr. Nixon tonight, the location of these spaces. Also, we may have a developer design, get approval for a public space, and a doctor comes along and say, I want to rent a portion of it on this first floor, the second floor, as opposed to the ground floor. So that is why we have to work with these organizations like your ministry, Mr. Telesford, and see how we can encourage practitioners in the healthcare in terms of how they set up their offices, what facilities they cater for people who are differently abled. Also, we have the whole transformation agenda. We intend to partner with the Ministry of Infrastructure, which is our mainline ministry, and social development, because at the end of the day, if we develop in Grenada, we're looking at how it affects the people who live and work here, who visit here, whether it's for business or leisure. So our approach should not be strictly technical. How do we build sizes, the setbacks, and so on? How do we accommodate citizens? How do we make their lives better? And I know many of the questions will be directed towards the Planning Authority tonight, because whenever persons get an opportunity, they take advantage of it. And I'm grateful for that, because there are many things and operations of the authority that the public does not understand. So our intention is to sensitize the public. We have had a media launch last month. We've had a cocktail event to invite developers, real estate agents, some persons from ministries, so that they would see our plans for the future. Because Have any one of you all thought of what Grenada would look like in 50 years? And what decisions we have to make now to realize those things that we want our country to dwell on, to progress as a people. And the word transformation is being used throughout the country. More than a year ago, I started hearing that word being used a lot. But now we have to look at inclusion. How do we push Grenada forward and not leave persons who are differently abled behind? We have to work with the Ministry of Social Development. Reason being, there are many existing public spaces that do not cater to persons with disabilities. So some hard decisions would have to be made. There are public spaces, there are privately owned spaces that offer services to the public. Things like parking spaces for persons with disability. There's a size that needs to be used. Because if you're using a wheelchair and you're getting out of a car, you need more space than a normal size car park. So things like retrofitting is something we have to seriously consider. But we need the support of Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Social Development, and the government as a whole. So I don't want to exhaust my time because I know tonight I may get some other questions. So I thank you for your indulgence and look forward to some questions shortly. Mr. Ferguson is next. Thank you.
I think Mr. Bartholomew deserves a better round of applause than that. Listen, we want the gentleman to team up with the Minister of Social Development and Health to get this thing going in 50 years, So you had to give him a better encouragement than that. We can't just, he really want him to work. But the only problem I have with that, it's taking too long. I wouldn't be around in 50 years to see it. Okay, it's getting late, so let's move right along. Now, you notice what we did, eh? We left the gentleman who would tell us about the physical development, how they're going to change things, for one before the last. And we bring in the gentleman who is going to put all the legal aspects of it into perspective. And hopefully, we had a policeman here, he might be gone. When you all don't follow the law, we're going to put the police. So let us invite to the podium Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, attorney, QC, attorney at law. Congrats, Mr. Ferguson. Sorry? Casey. Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Casey. Mr. Ferguson.
Yes. Good evening, all. Thank you, Chair, Minister, Head Table, audience. Suppose my task is to keep you awake. I will try my best. But I know time is short, and there were several interesting presentations here this evening. And I just want to start off with the lady from Barbados, the UN representative. And note, she was the UN representative dealing with human rights. And she stated that this was the 75th year of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that came into effect in December 1948 after the Second World War. And it was from that document that several human rights charters developed, and even our own constitution, our supreme law in Grenada, introduced 50 years ago, reflect many of the ideals and rights contained in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And some of these rights you may be familiar with. I know everyone knows about the right to freedom of expression. And there's usually a pause after that. What are the other fundamental rights? But you have starting the right to life, the right to liberty, protection from slavery and forced labor, protection from cruel and inhuman punishment, freedom of conscience, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of movement, and protection from discrimination. And the point I wish to make is that everyone is entitled to these fundamental rights. They are not fundamental rights save for those suffering from disabilities. They are fundamental rights to which all are entitled. And there were several interesting points raised on the head table this evening. And as the chair highlighted, issues of respect, issues of accessibility, and all noble objectives that we as a society aspire for. Now, and my friend, Dr. Nixon, pointed out in her characteristic style, you know, you're a doctor, your office is on the second floor, supposed to be on the first floor. So what happens if I have it on the second floor? Anything happens if I have it on the second floor? My office on the second floor, you come to the second floor and meet me. To meet me, if you can't come, you can't come. You go by somebody on the first floor. And it's the first thing that struck me. Many of the points made, very importantly, but they are aspirational. In other words, we wish to work towards these ideals. They are important ideals. But fundamental to ensuring that these ideals actually become part of the infrastructure of society, for which there will be consequences if they are not put or are not followed, they are not complied with. And that is where the legal infrastructure comes in. You may have heard many times when addressing the Constitution, and certainly the period of Constitution reform and the referendum, the concept of the separation of powers. And it's important to understand what the separation of powers doctrine is all about. Because the state is divided in a sense. There are three main arms of the state, all co-equal arms of the state. And you have one, the executive, and our minister is a member of the executive, and the ministers sit in cabinet. Only if you are not a minister, you don't sit in cabinet. And cabinet is the policy-making body. And then you have parliament. That is the law-making body. And you have, in our system, the ministers are also members of parliament. But the responsibility of parliament is to make laws. Make laws, as the Constitution says, for the peace, order, and good government of the country. And then, of course, you have the judiciary, and that's the judges, magistrates, the legal system, and they apply the law, interpret the law, and enforce the law. So, why do I make that point? Because we speak a lot about policy and policy making, and of course public education. And I must say that it is really commendable, and I'm always impressed by the St. Paul Sports and Cultural Organization, and in this month teaming up with the Grenada National Council for the Disabled. I think if every community had organizations like the St. Paul Sports and Cultural Organization, will be much further ahead in development. So all of this is about cabinet can shape the policy, and we can develop respect, become more conscious, but developing respect for persons who are disabled. But then, is the legal infrastructure in place to ensure that consequences flow when there is non-compliance? Is the legal infrastructure in place to ensure that the policy is really carried through and implemented? And I just want to make the point, and Dr. Nixon touched on it. We speak, and we have been speaking a lot about physical disabilities, but disabilities also include mental disabilities. And I'm happy that she gave the example too that she did, and gave a plug for it. But you know, in Grenada, we have an act. It's called the Hospitals Act from 1885. And that is the act that we use today to deal with our mental patients, 120-something years after. 1885. And I was involved in a study, in fact, back in 2004, at the time, PAHO, wanting to introduce a new mental health act. And whatever preliminary work that I did on it and sent it to PAHO, and it was an eye-opener for me, because you know what the act says? The opening salvo of the act says, this is an act to deal with lunatics. And throughout that act, the expression about criminal lunatic, this lunatic, that lunatic, that is the act that is still in effect today. And it was sent to PAHO. And a few years later, they sent it back, and I was asked to do consultations throughout the country in relation to the act, which I did, including going to Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And I remember sometime in 2010, 2011, I was hustled to do the final report on the consultations so this thing can become a reality. I remember I was coming from somewhere, but I completed it all night in a hotel room in Miami, sent it in the next day. And wherever it landed, that is where it remained, up to this, to mental patients. What I discovered then, apart from the language, we're talking about respect for people with disability, respect for whether mental or physical disability, and we have the law that governs it, calling them lunatics. You're talking about respect, and you have a Mongay hospital, and you discover that people inside it 30 and 40 years. Like it's a place where you put people when you can't deal with them. It's like a prison for mental patients. Could you imagine if you're going to hospital now and then you come out about 30 years later? It is supposed to be a hospital. The Mental Health Act aimed to bring all of that in conformity with the modern world. So that people, for example, who own land and for whatever reason face mental challenges, they don't lose it, that people don't take advantage of them, that all the fundamental rights and freedoms that we speak about, they also can enjoy those fundamental rights and freedoms, where the emphasis would not be on hospitalization, but on primary health care. So all of this was reflected, and it came out of international conventions. So I'm happy to see the minister here. I'm sure he will make some inquiries about that. So just that legal infrastructure, when I was preparing, again, for the session tonight, I know my always the Constitution that protects one from discrimination. But the Constitution is a relatively small document. What it does, it sets up the structures of the state. So the Constitution creates cabinet, it creates parliament, and it says parliament is responsible for passing laws for the peace, order, and good government of the country. So when I was looking for laws relating to people with disability, I actually thought the Grenada National Council for the Disabled, there was an act that created it. I didn't see anything. So that is just part of the state structure, or, sorry? Yes, so I didn't see it, and I really thought there was a law for it. But there are no laws. There are no laws to enforce all these nice things we are talking about. And until that is done, all of this will remain a talk shop, really. Right? Because you need the legal teeth to be able to enforce. So I was quite happy to hear the CEO of the physical planning and all of these plans and so 50-year plans. But is there anything in our laws that say if we are to approve a public building, that building must make provisions for disabled people? Do we have it? Or is it dependent on who sits on the board, then they do it? These things must be contained in laws, so they are followed. And that's why governments, as I said, government has a legislative agenda. And laws make a major difference. You know, many of you, I'm sure all of Grenada, one time debated about the child is a child legislation. And in fact, when Dr. Francis Alexis was AG, he piloted that legislation. And know what that simple legislation did? It changed, it gave rights to persons who were born out of wedlock, for children born out of wedlock to inherit property. Outside of that, you're talking about the Caribbean where 75% of the people born out of wedlock. But it is that law that changed it. There was a law. It's not based on the niceness of people or some policy. It became law. And through that, many people who could not inherit property before are now able to inherit property. I know time is going quickly, and I just want to make mention, again, in researching. So I looked through, when I realized Grenada National Council for the Disabled, there is no act that really creates that institution. I looked for laws in the Caribbean. And really the two main places were Trinidad and Jamaica. Trinidad has what is called an Equal Opportunity Act. An Equal Opportunity Act that prohibits discrimination and promotes equality of opportunity. And there's a commission. So if you have a complaint, you have somewhere to go. You go to the commission. And then there is an Equal Opportunity Tribunal, which is a court that deals with equal opportunity cases, where judges sit just like other courts. So they have that, and back in 2000, so you actually have a tribunal. Somebody who complains, it's not just a complaint. You don't go and talk on the radio station and then tomorrow morning is the same thing, a different voice, same story. You can go to a court and get relief. You also have Jamaica. Jamaica has a Disabilities Act 2014. So we actually have an act to support disabled people. And they also have what is called a Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities as part of the law. And they also have a tribunal, a disabilities rights tribunal. You say your rights and so violated, you have institutions and structures to which you may go. And just included in all of this, sorry, I'll try to wrap up. It's a lot, but included in all of this, just some extracts to illustrate the point from the Jamaica Act. 26, an educational or training institution shall not deny access to a person with disability from being enrolled at or attending the institution by reason of disability. You have, again, premises and housing. It says here, the owner or the agent of the owner of an existing private premises who has rented or intends to rent or lease such existing premises shall, not may, shall, mandatory, if requested by a person with a disability, make or cause to be made such alterations to that premises or a part thereof, in order to ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, the premises is accessible to and usable by a person with a disability. That's the law. They have provision for participation in public life, in political life, and my final one, public passenger vehicles. That's the law. Right? That's not a plan. We have some good folks in planning, and they say, let's do that for the next 50 years. Another boat comes in and they reverse that. That makes sense? Let's put a new one. It's the law. And it says here, section 40, the minister with responsibility for public passenger vehicles shall ensure, as far as is practicable, the provision of public passenger vehicles that are accessible to and usable by persons with a disability. That's the law. They say public passenger vehicles include any motor vehicle or other conveyance for transport by road, rail, air, or water that provides the general public with a general or special transportation service on a regular or continuing basis. There's a lot more that can be said, but of course time is very limited. And so the point I'm making here, all of this is good. But if you don't have the legal infrastructure in place, it becomes a choice. When there is a law, everybody is bound by the law. The laws are not affected by a change of government. They say, okay, you have a Disability Act now, and the next government change and they abolish it. Right? These are not controversial political things. These are things that benefit the ordinary man. And as the saying goes, society is really judged by the way you treat the marginalized, the poor, the marginalized, and those who suffer from disabilities. Thank you.
So you see the kind of eye-opener that we just got, eh? So we're far behind. Do you know the one that, just a minute, we will take you. You know the thing that got me the most was the part about the lunatic, but you know what is even worse? I remember when I was in the electoral office, that's one of the things that I came across, you know. The lunatics are not allowed to vote. But I was still wondering, what is a lunatic? I mean, I knew what it meant, but the language is so harsh and so degrading. It really struck me. So now I think I will have to reassign the minister. because we have a lot of laws here to change. And maybe we have to start there, because I was giving him a team to work with to get some of these infrastructural things, the physical, done. But without the legal infrastructure, we have no teeth. So, Minister, don't worry about who crossing floor, who yellow, who green. Let's get these laws reviewed, updated, and the consultation will have to start as soon as yesterday. We can't go ahead with 18-something laws in this modern society. Okay? Okay, we will open the floor for questions and answers, comments. But first of all, I want to thank the entire panel for a job well done. Give them a round of applause. So we have a mic in the aisle, and I will ask you, upon show of hand, to come to the mic if you can, or the mic will come to you, right? All inclusiveness. And you will ask a question. You might want to direct it to a particular person, or you may want to just ask it openly, and whoever able will answer it. I recognize the first hand at the back. I think that's Mr. Rollo.
Yes, Citizen John Rollo.
Yes. Oh, Citizen John Rollo.
Is this thing on?
Yes, it is. It is on, right?
Well, I reckon I can talk
Okay.
without. But anyway,
Yeah.
I would like to make a comment on each of the presenters briefly, and also to ask certain questions. And in the final analysis, I tried my best to be as succinct as possible to create conditions for resolution in this act here this evening. Because there is a need for a resolution amongst the parties here, sufficient. Miss Chrissy Charles Wong. I was very much enthused by hearing Ms. Wong speak of the 8 principles upon which the United Nations Conventions was built. 8 of them. And she read them out well. Sad to say that in this here country for all these years, since this convention had been set up in 2008, for immediate implementation, the government, the state, that colonial state of Grenada, have continued to abuse the people with disabilities, unfortunately. The issue related to people with disabilities is a fundamental human rights instrument, the first of the 21st century. But here, it was assigned to the office of the so-called Governor General. And he or she picked a team, and these are the poster boys that are around the place making strange statements and know nothing, and refuse to talk about the rights, the fundamental rights of people with disabilities. So I was happy when Ms. Charles spoke of, Ms. Worm spoke of these things, and I do trust, in summary, and I challenge the minister here this evening to generate a resolution so that we can guarantee what has to be done in this country. The domestication of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities here and now, it is long overdue. The second speaker was Miss, what's her name again?
Brathwaite.
Ms. Brathwaite made some very interesting points. But again, it takes us around it to the principal thing. Nothing has been done. I'd like Ms. Brathwaite, and there are no questions for Ms. Wong, but there is one thing I'd like to ask Ms. Brathwaite. Can we get some statistics on results of all the lessons and classes and teaching in your institution over the years? How many of these people that pass through your institution have been opportuned to lifelong learning, to develop skills that can take them through to professions? Do we have that? I'd like, if you can't answer that question. The third was, will somebody help me on the third speaker? Dr. Nixon. Interesting, Dr. Nixon. But here's my comment to you, Dr. Nixon. I hear you from time to time on the radio. You know I've lauded and applaud you on your contribution to the health of the people of this country as you advise them. But Dr. Nixon, we need voices like yours joining mine, above all, to call upon the state of Grenada to do what they have to do. They're not granting us any favors. Let us demand. That's what we have to do. This country is ours. We are the ones who hold the power. The sovereign and constituent power of this country resides in the people who like it, who don't like it, do what they like about it. The fourth speaker, Mr. What's his name? Smith. Not Smith, pardon.
Philip.
Anyway.
Mr. Philip.
I can't remember the name, Mr. Jamal. Listen, I thought I was able to do a better job than to talk about the matters at hand. Here we didn't come here to personalize any poster boys. We're not looking for it. This is beyond. The issues at hand here is beyond poster boys. We have to understand this is a matter for all the people with disabilities in this country. As I understand too, he's a representative of the Grenada National Council for the Disabled. We will reach to that just now. But hear this. What of the others? What of the others? The 2011 census stipulated crystal clear there 26,000 plus cases of disabilities in Grenada, of which 9,834 are blind people with various intensities. One comes out and says, hallelujah, and he's a poster boy. You know, what about the others? What about me? I can solve this country, but they refuse to give me an opportunity because I talk too much enough. No. Let's go finally to the other gentleman that spoke on as it relates to development. He's talking about things in the 23rd century. The last one, Mr. Ferguson. I am happy that you have done some research, Mr. Ferguson, and have identified that the Grenada National Council, because one of my questions I was going to ask this evening was to show me the documentation that establishes the Grenada National Council as representative of people with disabilities in the country, to tell me what in effect gives them opportunity, privileges, rights to be soliciting cash and kind on behalf of people with disabilities when they do not represent them. As a matter of fact, that organization is a fraudulent one. Say what you like. So, Mr. Ferguson, and finally, I'd like you also to join us and to demand of the state of Grenada that we begin the process of domesticating, the International Convention, UN, it's called UNCRPD, Convention on the Rights of Persons, which is used in legal document with disabilities. I want you to join me, Mr. Ferguson. You refuse to even mention the existence of this convention, but it is there. I'll be brief. I said I'll be succinct and brief, so there we go. I think my message is clear, but I'll still continue to make my noise on the radio because it's the opportunity I have. But I'm happy that Grenadians know now that, in fact, the Grenada National Council for the represents no one in this here country. Thank you very much and have a nice evening, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Citizen Rollo. Well, we heard you loud and clear. And well, we take notes. I don't know that we will have the resolution this evening, but we heard you, and maybe in the near future, something like that could be done. We would move on, and I want to ask that in the interest of time, let's try and keep it, kind of tight so that we can move on. A number of people might want to ask questions. Mr. Latouche?
All right, good afternoon. Presently, I'm wearing two hats. One, as a member of the organization, right? Two, as a certified electrician/technician. To my friend down there, they're from the physical planning, right? Only up to today, a gentleman called me and was asking questions such as, apparently when he built a house, he was normal. Today he's on a wheelchair. So his questions to me was, can he remove his light switch and bring them down? Because apparently he went to electricians and they said, no, there's a standard height. There's no books. I'm going to say it again. I have read the book since after finished school. There's no books that says this thing has to be a standard height. What way that one is? Somebody's on a wheelchair, that's difficult for them to get. That is too high. So please, I suggest to my friend down there, my friend, suggest to electricians that if somebody come with that concern, let them drop it. So that somebody on a wheelchair could get at that light switch. Because that switch there is catered for somebody who is walking. It is not catered for somebody who is on a wheelchair. Yeah?
You know, I think I saw, pardon me, I can't see it, but I think I saw the lady with the pink, and then we'll take the one with the cream. I can't make out the faces. So you're next. Just before you go though, Mr. Bartholomew, you wanted to address the point he made, or you just taking notes? You want to respond? We have a mic.
Good night again. When it comes to electrical works, our authority reviews drawings. And I've seen comments, for example, of a policy on where you put light switch. Like if it's directly in the bathroom area, you could have electrocution if you walk out of the shower and you touch a switch. So we only allow things like shavers. But when it comes to the height, we still have to work with the Ministry of Infrastructure because they send their inspectors to inspect those properties before it's passed. So as I think we have to liaise with the ministry, and because it goes back to what Mr. Ferguson was talking about, laws in place. So we should have some sort of teeth to give that authority and say, okay, in this exception, or you have a facility with people with disabilities, the height of the light switch. And again, I learned so much tonight, and this is something that I never even thought about, a light switch, the height of a light switch. I'm glad that you raised it. Mm. Yes.
Just brought it down a couple of inches. So that coastal region can get height. But the electricians are saying that we cannot bring this thing down. The school where I studied was Service Electrical.
Yeah.
And according to what he said there are no standard heights that you could put a light in. For the bathroom, yes, you can put lights in this.
Yes, yeah. Mm.
Because current and water is different. That's the bathroom.
Okay, I clearly, yeah, this is something that we have to look into. Because I'm considering you're retrofitting a building. If you're doing interior work, the public may not see that, but if somebody's constructing a building and they submit those plans and the inspectors, the people from the Ministry of Works go to inspect, then they may raise a question on that. So that's something that we have to definitely work out. The intended use of the persons who will be occupants of the building or the space. So thanks for raising that point.
Okay. Very important point. You know, ironically, a few years ago, I also learned that in some countries, you are not allowed to use the doorknobs that you turn. It has to be the ones that you press down to cater for people with certain disabilities as well. Yes, lady in pink. She has a mic.
You hear me now?
Okay, now I think
You hear me now?
right.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Good
Mrs.
night.
St. Louis, good.
My name is Alicia St. Louis. I am currently a disabled, but I'm also, sorry, a mother of a disabled with autism. Autism has an organization here that recently got a building. The building has different rooms that can be used to host, let us say, training for persons with disability Okay, I don't know if anybody from that organization is here, but that's good to know. I am concerned that the population of adults with disability is big here in Grenada, and nothing is available for them. I would like to have that inclusion in the upcoming programs so that something is done about it. It's really, really critical. These are persons that can even contribute to the development of society, and absolutely nothing is currently available for them. I want to also say one of the presenters used a wrong term. You don't say differently able, you say disabled, okay? So please, whoever has that term, okay, we don't use that. You call us disabled, no differently able. Okay? No. You don't call us differently able. We are disabled people with different disabilities. Okay. As part of the inclusion, I'm happy that the minister is here. I went to the Ministry of Social Development or Community Development about 3 weeks ago. I spoke to the secretary of the permanent secretary asking where I should address a letter to request a disabled parking. The ministry, the ministerial complex does not have a parking for the disabled. They have the ramp to access the building, but there is no parking. So that space right next to the ramp to enter can be created. So I use this forum to kindly request that inclusion. I also think the access to the immigration office can also include a ramp for us to access the immigration department, okay? So these are governmental buildings that should have a parking, all right? For us, the disabled people. A lot of people with disability drive in Grenada, and they can't get a disabled parking, all right?
Okay.
My last point, I don't know if people here know about CBR, which is Caribbean Rehabilitation Program. It's my understanding that Grenada has a CBR board as part of a government organization or board or whatever. This is a community. This is a community organization. This is not a government department. But if the government has a CBR board, that board should contact either GNCD or any of those disabled organizations and ask them what sort of financial support they can offer. Why I say this? In December, I met one of the members of the CBR board, and that's when I came to know that CBR now is a board within the government. And I was shocked because CBR is us, okay? Us, the disabled community.
Okay, so let's
And my last one
another
is
one. Can we, Ms. St. Louis, maybe we could take another one after, because we have the lady in cream.
I finished. I said thank you.
Okay, thank you. But before we go to the lady, to the next person, I just want to, I need a little bit of education here, please. Can somebody from the panel or somebody from the committee, somebody help us here? Because I'm hearing different things about the disability, differently able, disabled, So, who is the expert on it? Please let us leave here with some education. Anybody on the panel?
So, no. So first of all, I want to apologize to Mr. St. Louis for if I hurt your feelings, totally unintentional. The truth is, this has been a nomenclature in evolution. So you go to one place, they say disability or disabled. You go to another environment, they say differently abled. The people in North America want to be called differently abled, and they make the biggest amounts. They have the most facilities. So I really apologize. There's no intention to hurt anybody's sensibilities tonight.
Okay, the lady here.
Can I sit?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. My name is Glennis Burke Francis, and I have a child who is she has cerebral palsy, and she's in her 20s. Now, I have a question. This one is for the Ministry of Health. How prepared are we to ensure that people who are differently abled or challenged and have different disabilities such as cerebral palsy, autism, and other things are meaningfully taken care of health-wise? I'm talking about both adults and children. And I want to look at specialists for these people, therapists for these people. How prepared are we? Okay, I have a second. Should I go on or?
No, can I answer this?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't work for the Ministry of Health. I'm a physician with really intentions to make my community the best as possible. I have worked in the Ministry of Health before in a capacity as Senior Medical Officer for chronic disease, but I would still like to address your concern because I think it's very important. We do have an aging population. I'm sure that your 20-year-old does not have the same needs as she did, he or she. Is it a male or female?
It's a female.
So I'm sure your daughter does not have the same needs as she has and the same challenges when she was 4 and 5. She's 20 and much bigger and much difficult, much harder for you to move around and etc. She's going to develop diseases eventually that older people has as she gets older, okay? The truth is, because we don't have a policy on how we take care of people who have disabilities, we kind of wonder what are we going to do. However, hold on, may I finish? However, every single citizen in this country has a right to all the care that is available, regardless of your ability. It's inclusive. It's in the law. It's in the rules of the Ministry of Health. So your daughter should have access to whether it's specialty or not. However, at the same time, because our health system is not as developed, especially when it comes to people who, on the margin, people with mental health, people with physical disabilities, your daughter has cerebral palsy. She has a lot of physical needs, and I understand that. We can't, there's no structure in place currently. I have a patient who is in her 40s, who has severe learning disabilities. She lives with her sister by chance because the rest of her family, her mother has died. Mother died suddenly, her mother took care of her. Her sister needs to migrate with her own children. There's no way for a 40-year-old who is severely dependent for care to go. If you're 60, you can go to Richmond Hill. Because it's a senior's home. You guys understand me? If you're 40s, there's nowhere to go. A lot of people are still at one of the homes in Tempe, right? Because they were there as children and they've stayed there as they've grown because there's been nowhere for them to be moved into. So there is that gap in our healthcare delivery, Minister of Social Development, that we have to take into consideration, and I hope sooner than later.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nixon. My second question, public spaces, and that's for the person representing physical planning. A real-life example, public spaces. Accessibility in getting to the eye clinic, as simple as it might sound, it can be a nightmare for some people. the people who are doing surgery or who have difficulty in maneuvering up and down those steps. And don't ask about the limiting seating spaces up there. Also, getting to the hospital is another challenge. The steps in itself, what can be done? Even if someone drops you there, there's no limited or little public parking for these people. So people, most people with disability, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? I hope that coming out in this forum, it would not only be teeth, all teeth and no bite, because we have been suffering. I have been suffering. My entire family have been suffering for 20-something years. Our daughter has never, only about once or twice, thanks to Miss Michelle Buffett, who really tried her best. She has never, ever been to school. And even when we go out into society, we are faced with stares and all kind of abuse. But thank God, this mother hen is here, and she defends her child. So I really hope that coming out from this session that I can get some redress. Mr. Minister, you are looking at me. I would like to have a word with you, please, after the forum, if it's possible. Also, your PS, also your PS, thank you very, very, very much. I have been grieving, I have been hurting for 20-something years, and I need some redress. We need some redress. Every other person in my position needs some redress. Thank you very much.
So, Mother, your ire is very well placed. Your anger is very well placed, and I understand the frustration. Do you remember the first question I asked? Where is your doctor's office?
Yes, Dr. Nixon, I know all about that.
No. What I'm saying is that, first of all, there's a thing called health in all policies. Hold on, let me finish. There's a thing called health in all policies, and the truth is, every entity, ministry, service, whether it's finance, infrastructure, everybody, when they're doing policy and development, has to take into consideration health. What are the health needs of a policy? How am I going to build the road back in Molinaire? Are people going to be able to walk? Right? Or do I just build a road with a drop? If I'm doing downtown, are we going to fix the sidewalks? Are we going to have a rail for the children who go to Heinze School? Do we have enough rail for coming down Longstep? You guys understand what I'm saying? Unless we address the gaps and make sure that we develop our country and whatever services we're having for our population so that everybody can use the services, we're going to have the challenges that you feel today. And like I say, I hope sooner than later we can fix it, because we have to make any development. This is transformation. This is changes. It's going to be hard. It's going to take time sometimes. Some might not be possible. But I think we have to start little by little to address our country's development so that everybody can benefit.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nixon. I think I saw Citizen Rollo's hand, and then the lady here in the blue.
Just permit me quickly. No, Mike, not necessary. I was only going to say that the United Nations Convention is meticulously careful in the use of these terms. It does not speak of people with disability, of disabled people. For instance, no one can tell me I'm disabled. Any man, woman, tell me that I can let me wait for a white on your seat. I have a disability. I suffer with this people suffer with disability. Being disabled is discouraging, and the convention is clear on that.
Okay, thank you. Now the lady in the blue behind, I think, yeah.
Good night. My name is Shadine Thomas. I'm a mother of 2 special needs children. As of now, I'm their sole parent because their father is dead. So I'm the one responsible for these 2 children. My daughter is 16, my son is 14. Since my son was 3 years, he's autistic. He's severely autistic. As he's 14, he's still wearing Pampers. Since he was 3, I've been trying to get him in school, to no avail. I've been very vocal. Well, now he's in school. I had to be vocal for 10 years before something could have happened whereby my son could have been included into school. The system sucks in Grenada. As it stands now, I, Shireen Thomas, am trying to do my utmost best to get my children out of here because I see sufferation, I see non-inclusiveness, I see abuse, I see all kind of negative things towards my children here in Grenada. I don't see nothing positive. They're going to school, I still don't see nothing positive. At least they have they're going to school. But what is the result of going to school? After they go to school, they attend the school for special education, up to 22 years. I see betterment. I see my children as kings and queens, whereby they deserve the best. They deserve all opportunities that is there for them. I don't see my daughter just going to the school for special education, reach 22, and then what? And then what? There is nothing. My daughter has a speech impairment and a developmental delay. So she's 16, but she's not at a 16-year-old level. You get me? Mm-hmm. So I right now stand as a very frustrated mother, and this has developed from over the years of being in Grenada and not seeing nothing, no development. My daughter is 16 years, what? What could I say that there's an improvement, there's something, nothing. And some people there know me because I have been vocal. I have talked. I've spoken to ministers. I've spoken to people in different institutes. The lady spoke about the Autistic Foundation that is established in Grenada. That is a farce. That is just a name. That is just people on a board saying they are part of something. But in reality, there is nothing going on with that Autistic Foundation. Okay. I reached out to them. I was very explicit. I emailed them a very explicit letter explaining myself towards them, thinking that they have the knowledge of autism on all spectrums, so they would understand where I am coming from. You know what they did with that letter? They sent it to CPA. They didn't reach out to me. They sent it to CPA and said they have a concern for the child. Am I not the mother? Am I not concerned for my child? Why I reached out to you? Is that the way you deal with people in such situations? So what I'm saying, health-wise, social-wise, education-wise, all these wise need to come together as one and see how they could plan. It hurt me to hear the lawyer.
I don't want to cut you, it's probably after 10. I want you to be able to speak out, and I know sometimes you need to speak. But just finish what you're saying, and let us try to get some responses.
But what Mr. Ferguson said towards not having a law, not having things in place at a level whereby things should be implemented and forcefully, it hurt me to know that there's nothing in place. So I'm just pleading with whoever, the powers that be, please see people, persons with disabilities, and include them. See them as important. To me, persons with disabilities are in the minority. Henceforth, it should be easy to deal with such a minute group of people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing, and I'm quite sure as we would have listened to two of the parents this evening, we realize that definitely there are parents who are hurting. There are a lot of concerns that they do have. What I can say is that we have come a long way in terms of what existed before to even know what is happening, and we know that we still have a long way, more or less, to go in terms of education. We can say, for example, now we have students who are able to sit the CPA exam. We do not want it for just one student or two or three, but we want that the opportunity is given to all special needs children when they would have reached that particular age, and that's where we're talking about inclusion. So that is the way that we are going. We know that we have come a far way from being institutionalized in terms of our antiquated way of functioning, in that how we saw special needs students. For example, look, we're looking at the legislation which says imbeciles. Just think of that. So we do have a long way to go. We are aware of that, but I believe that we would have made some mark, and we will continue to move forward in terms of education and access for all of our students. And I should mention that within the Education Act, however, that there is a section which speaks to special education. And we are hoping presently there is a review being done, which then would of course have to be approved, as we know, by cabinet and then be taken to parliament and so on. So presently, as of last week, I know a review has been done in terms of, in relation to the Education Act, which of course we know has to be taken to cabinet. But work is being done, and we do have a lot more to do. Sad to say that there are some students who would have definitely may not have had that opportunity and may have slipped through the cracks, but we do hope that going forward our students can have access, as we have a few that are having access, but we want it to be even more, and that's what we're working towards in terms of access to secondary school, tertiary level, and so on, so that they can live a fulfilled life like any other child.
Testing. Hello? Now, to Mr. Bartholomew, right? I would just like to, make a suggestion in respect to the 50-year development plan, right? I think it's a bit too long, and if you take all the parameters that necessitates presenting and preparing a plan, it will be very critical. In addition, I'd also like to suggest that within the state, there are areas that necessitate planning intervention. So what could be done is that you do an area development plan for those areas. So that would merge and compensate and has the relationship to the national plan. But in my opinion, I just like to say that 50 years is a little too long. Thank you.
I agree. I won't be alive. Mr. Button, you want to say anything?
Good evening again. When I say 50 years, I mean that is our long-term goal for the development of Grenada. There are a lot of activities and provisions that will be implemented throughout that period. And mind you, 50 years ago, Dubai was what, a fishing village? We saw pictures of it. Look how long it took to get to that point. So we are developing Grenada, but we must have a destination where how are we going to develop the country, and we not picturing how it's going to look like in 10, 20, or 50 years ahead. But of course, there are short-term goals for Grenada as well. But 50 years is what we as an authority are working with. But it's a gradual process. 50 years is not the end game. Thank you, sir.
What I'm saying is that you do not have to defend the 50 years.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. We understand where the authority is going. we have to think not only of ourselves. I mean, I'm only joking and I say I wouldn't be alive, it should be sooner. But we have to remember that we have generations to come after us. And they are going to blame us for if we leave Grenada as it is today. If this is the Grenada we are going to deliver to them, we will have failed them. So in 50 years from now, is really short in terms of what we do for the next generations that's coming after us. Any further questions? Yes, lady. Well, because they are streaming and the people outside need to hear, you might have to use it.
Good night, everyone. I am the sister of someone with a disability, and
let's hear each speaker, please. Inclusiveness.
Okay. So while I sat tonight and I listened to all the speeches, which I will call speeches because we are not sure about the practicability or implementation of all what was said tonight, I am not so much interested in a 50-year plan as how many of us here will actually be around in 50 years to see the plan. I'm just looking at simple things that we can do to improve the lives of persons with disability, especially those who are wheelchair-bound. Let's take a look at the town of St. George's, for example. While we have a problem with vendors on the sidewalk and persons stated, well, accessibility of person with disability while walking on the sidewalk. My first question is, how do you get onto the sidewalk? That's the first question. In order to have a problem with spacing on the sidewalk, you need to be able to get onto the sidewalk. No. I have tried it in Grenada, and I noticed the problem with the sidewalks are they start abruptly up in the air, and they just drop right down. So someone with a wheelchair literally has to be bumped up with help to get on top the sidewalk to begin with. So as the physical plan speaks about buildings and accessing buildings, first step first, we need to actually get to the buildings. So you cannot access a building that you cannot get to. So we need to look at the sidewalk issue in areas where there actually are something what we call sidewalks, which are very few and far in between. But where there actually are sidewalks, we need to look at how we get onto the sidewalks. So while we look at buildings and making buildings accessible and ground floor, first floor, second floor, 10th floor, elevator, all these, chalalang, we need to look at the first step, how we actually get into the building to see the doctor, how you actually get in from your vehicle, because then we'll have to look at the overall issue of non-accessibility. Parking is non-existent in the town of St. George, period. And then we have to look at areas such as Grenada, which is more accessible to persons with disability. But yet it's still limited, as some buildings have steps. So they may have a little ramp, but the ramp have a sudden drop, or a sudden incline, even the steps. Some buildings are relatively flat, but then you see there's one step or two steps. So you're like, well, how am I getting inside the building? So all these things we have to look at, and sometimes how we make ramps. Some of these ramps just go straight down, you're sliding right down, you have to go down backwards with a wheelchair. All these things in practicability we need to look at, not just saying, oh, I have a ramp, but when you go on the ramp, you're just sliding all the way down, or you have to go backwards. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. And I do agree, it doesn't take 50 years to fix the sidewalks, but I know the minister had hurting him by now.
Yes. Thanks again for your questions. We're looking at a long-term plan for Grenada. Many of you believe that it's too long. However, the foods that China is bearing now started in the 70s. And when we look at disability, Mr. Ferguson spoke about laws. The way our country runs, how do you compel persons to build for disabilities? We have to get the law inside first. So how do you, what action do you take if we don't have laws We have a building code, and it says designers should be aware of the ADA, American Disability Association Act, right? American Disability Act. But what Mr. Ferguson was speaking about in comparing us to the acts in Trinidad and Jamaica is that's the level we have to get at. Of course, we can make provisions now in the short term. Yes, and again, we're developing a country for who? Are we developing a country for us at present or for the future as well? So that's why we're looking at future development as well. People saying that they would not be around in 50 years. So do we forget about why do we educate our students? Why do we spend millions of dollars every year to educate children? Because we're looking at the future. So we have long-term goals and short-term goals for the country. Of course, 50 years may seem like a long time away, but we're speaking about setbacks and sidewalks. And we have persons, when our compliance team approach them about the distance of the walls, fence walls, from the roadway, they have a problem. But don't you want to get to the point in the future where we have that space between the road reserve, where you can run a gas line? Just like you have water lines in Grenada, we have gas line going directly to your homes. How are we going to get to that level of development when we're meeting all this resistance? So do we want to move forward as an advanced country in the long term, or do we just want to deal with short-term goals? Just put a plaster here, a plaster there. We have to get the laws inside. We have to get things codified. How are we going to run our country to go forward? And I understand your concerns with the access for persons with disabilities and the location of healthcare spaces. This is something that we definitely have to deal with, especially with the Ministry of Social Development. But we would always have to have a long-term goal as a country to look at the holistic development of Grenada. For example, zoning. We don't want people to visit Grenada and think that they can put a hotel or casino anywhere in the country or any other, they must be zoned. So we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to take decades. But the issues now with the access to disabilities is acute. We have to deal with them quickly. Thank you.
Okay, let us keep it as respectable as we can, please. We want to hear all those who would like to speak. So let us try to keep it nice. Let's keep it nice.
Something I would want to recommend, seeing that we have Minister here with us, is that what should be done, even if we do not have laws presently to guide, but what we should be doing as a government is whenever we are thinking of whatever decisions we have to make, that we think inclusive. So, in other words, we're thinking about not just a building, we're thinking about buying a vehicle, we're thinking about setting up a committee, we're thinking about whatever, we think inclusive. And in that way, you would find that we are accommodating for all within society. So that it would not, because inclusion, when we think inclusive practice, it is not just only for people with disability, but we have to think of people with other challenges as well as other issues. So inclusion, one aspect of inclusion is dealing with people with disability, but there are many other things in relation to inclusion. So I think from a government point of view, we just have to think inclusive, and I believe that is what has been happening in terms of transformation, thinking inclusive. And with that, we would find it would be easier in terms of us and our planning. So I just thought that I should mention that.
Okay, I think that could be a nice way to end, but that is a very important point. It is 18 minutes past 10, and I would just pass the mic quickly. One take-home point from each person on the panel. Just one thing, basic thing, that you want us to take away as we leave here this evening. And we will start on this end, and we'll go down to the other end.
Good evening again. I'd like to thank the St. Paul's community for inviting me to partake in this event and extension of the Planning and Development Authority. And as a person operating in the public space, I learned a lot tonight, especially with regard to healthcare and the question the gentleman raised about the light switches and other amenities in your home, which we cater for people, which we should cater for persons with disability. And also, we have a OECS building code that made mention that designers should be aware of the American Disability Act. But like Mr. Ferguson said, we need something more robust going forward for that. Of course, we have a board of directors that are involved in the approval of joints. We will definitely, and we are continuing to give it consideration when it comes to public spaces. What we have to do is follow up with compliance, because someone can have it in the design, but we have to make sure that it's implemented. And we can use that as conditions for development. In the meantime, we deal with the laws, the solid laws for Grenada. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Well, the takeaway is really, one, the importance of institutions. It was mentioned before, what the St. Paul's Sports and Cultural Organization, collaborating with the Grenada National Council for the Disabled. And you know what came out of the session here this evening also is that so many people have stories to tell. So many people have stories to tell. And to bring about change, you need advocates. If you don't have advocates, there will be no change, because there are many competing priorities in life. So many competing priorities. And the change, in fact, the main advocates have to be the folks who face the challenges and therefore, speak out. Citizen Rollo made the point about the convention for people with disabilities and so. And I actually had that issue, several aspects of the convention. And I would urge advocates, not just about talking, but we have the framework internationally to guide this process forward. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, because the conventions exist. Our states have signed up to those conventions and must actually comply with those conventions as we ask our citizens to comply with local laws. And the other aspect of it that was just mentioned briefly, fleetingly this evening, that I also wanted to develop on but did not touch at all, are those goals. The UN Sustainable Goals 2020, Sustainable Development Goals. Each and every citizen must know about those goals, because those goals were developed in 2015, and the aim is by 2030, within 15 years, to achieve those goals. And the first goal number 1, the eradication of poverty by 2030. And in order to achieve it, there must be the global approach, there must be the local approach, and what they describe as the people approach. Civil society playing an important role. So it's not just about locally, but globally. So yes, I hear the chair.
So health is a right for every citizen of this world. But again, I want to piggyback a little on the Sustainable Development Goals, because we have to ensure that all citizens are cared for equally. Everybody must have, there's a thing called equity, where regardless of where you are, you have to have, situations must be put into place so that you can enjoy the benefits of the society in which you live. And as we aim to, remember I don't represent government, but as an advocate for the people of this country in relation to health, as we aim to develop the health care of our population, we cannot leave behind those who cannot advocate for themselves. We cannot leave behind the vulnerable. And it's not just people with physical and who can't see, who cannot see. There are other groups of people, people who have different sexual orientation and a whole lot. There are also people who need to be inclusive. Whatever development we have for health for our country must include health for people who are on the margins, one. Two, it must also ensure that people are not made poor in an effort to remain well. Okay? That's why we're having, where universal health care comes in. But also we have to remember that caregivers, and I mean not mothers and stuff, people who deliver care professionally must also be made aware. Education, it must be included in the medical schools and nursing schools and people who teach home care and all the rest. Those values, those phenomena must be part of the education system that ensures that people with disabilities or people who are not necessarily included are and have a right to be included.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Nixon. And I want to say thank you so much for, GNCD and also to the St. Paul's organization for having this very important consultation today. I was a little bit quiet today. I mean, normally anybody who knows me know that I'm very, very, very vocal. But I think sometimes we have to sit and listen, actively listen. Right, it's been a long while. I'm out on the field and just hearing some of our constituents, within our Ministry of Social Development, speaking about the trials and the difficulties and the advocacy that they had to fight for, recognizing their own right. It's really, 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 it's really heart-wrenching that we are here today, experiencing so many challenges. But I also look at it too as an opportunity to correct some of the mistakes that we have made in the past. And I'm speaking here as an advocate, I'm speaking here as a social worker, I'm speaking here as somebody who is really passionate about social change, right? And the attitudes of our people towards people living with disabilities, or somebody prefer to be called disabled, and I think a lot needs to happen. Policy needs to be developed. Accountability needs to happen too as well, right? And if we have to be the change, it begins with us all. So I'm appealing to everyone, right? Not just only here within our spaces, but persons who are joining us remotely, that change has to happen. For persons living with disability, we cannot continue as is. And I think I want to end here. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and I've noted it, and my minister is right here with us today, and I know he'll be holding us to task. Thank you so much. Thank you again to GNCD and St. Paul's Cultural Progressive Sports Organization. Right, thank you again. And you must applaud yourself for this activity. I just would want to say, education for all means all. Having access for all children in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Students with special needs, they have the opportunity to education. Every single child has the opportunity to education. What we would want is for parents who have their children at home to please allow for your child to be stimulated within our education system. The opportunity is there. Contact the Ministry of Education, the Special Education Unit, so that your child can have that access to education so that they can attain their fullest potential. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. And we come to the gentleman at the end. Mr. Philip.
Yes, good night again. I just want to express my gratitude for the Sempers Community Center, is it? Sports and Culture, yes, for having me. I think we should have, a lot more events like these. I think it would be beneficial to the country on a whole. What stands out important to me is what Mr. Ferguson mentioned as it relates to so many things that doesn't have law here in Grenada, and I think that is, in my view, is very serious, and I just hope that something can be done. I can only hope. There's nothing I can do other than hope and pray. All right? So, and before I go, I just want to, expound a little as to who I am. My name is Jamal Philip, and I am a God-fearing person. I am a humble soul. All right? I am not, quote unquote, a poster boy. Not my label, not my title, and not my portion. Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So as I wrap up the session, I want to say again, thank you very much to each and every member of the panel. I want to ask again for a round of applause for them for a job well done. And I also want to take this opportunity, I want to thank the minister for coming and for staying throughout the time. Ministers don't usually have that time. The fact that he remains means that he is interested, yes, and I know his head is hurting by now, but we look forward to the start. Now, we are passionate about what we did and say here tonight, but I know that it will take time, but at least if we see a start, we can look forward to something happening. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Grenada National Council for the Disabled, and I want to particularly thank them because they are not in any way guided by law, but they take on to do something that would help, even if it's a portion of our community of people with disability. So I want a round of applause for them. And also, as we usually have, I want to also ask for a round of applause for the St. Paul Sports Culture and Community Development Organization. And as I said before, it's the best in the region. This is a group that does things to help uplift and educate people, and this will not be the last. In fact, based on the amount of the passion that came out here today, and the anger that some people feel at the way they have been treated in the past, I believe we need another session like this where we can have more time for people to vent, for people to talk, and for people to gather the type of information they need so that we can move forward to make things better for each and every person, not for some people as we have now. So I want to thank you all again. I want to say get to your home safely and listen for the next forum that will be happening at this center. Thank you all very much.